about 15 seconds.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Russell Akaway, and you're watching Respect. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I created Respect, which is a show. It's a live TV talk show with young people on various topics that are very timely and of vital importance to young people today. I've chosen to change the format of this show, and I'm going to have a number of guest speakers on a very specific topic. The topic is teenage dating violence and abuse. It's very timely right now, given the news coverage of Rihanna and Chris, and it's occurring on a daily basis in schools throughout America. And the young people that are here today represent an organization called TARE, Teenagers Experiencing Abusive Relationships, where they go into the schools and they educate classrooms and teachers on teenage dating violence. Also have an individual who is a niece of someone who is severely affected by dating violence, and we'll come to her. I'd like each of the panelists to introduce themselves at this point and talk about where they're from, what they're doing. And I just was introduced to the panelists, so I got to make sure I say their names right and pronounce their names. Iona, last name?
Shayna.
Shayna.
Weisbrot.
Shayna Weisberg. Okay. You want to say a little bit something about yourself?
My name is Shayna Weisbrot, and I am a member of TARE, which stands for Teens Experiencing Abusive Relationships, which is a nonprofit organization that we began when we were in high school. Currently working full-time in victim services also as well.
Victim services in New Jersey?
Yes.
Okay. You graduated from college?
Yes.
Rutgers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, with a major in?
Women and Gender Studies.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My name is Chinaya Chikunta, and I am getting ready to graduate from Kean University with a major in media and film, minor in broadcasting. The reason that's my major is because I want to be able to use media to talk about social changes, and I am also a member of TARE.
Okay.
My name is Carrie Spicer. I am currently attending Seton Hall University to get my master's in public administration for nonprofit management. I graduated last year from the University of Hartford with Bachelor of Science in Human Services, and I'm also the co-founder of TARE.
My name is Maritza Rivera,
and I have a family member that was involved into in a teenage dating abuse relationship.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's begin by defining what is teenage dating violence. Anyone can start and add to it or take away.
Well, teenage dating violence is when one person uses a pattern of violent behavior through means of physical, verbal, emotional, mental intimidation to gain power and control over their partner. So it's a pattern of abusive behavior to gain power and control over their partner using abusive tactics.
Physical abuse?
Physical, mental, emotional, verbal, even technological abuse.
Sexual abuse?
Sexual.
What do you mean by that?
Technological?
Yeah.
Well, with the teens, with the technology so advanced and the teens being so knowledgeable in all the different aspects of social networking on the internet, text messages, chats, it's very easy, it's become easier to keep tabs on your partner. So it's caused a series of violent dating relationships due to, abuse through these technology
Aspects.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How different is it from, I'm a clinician, been a psychotherapist and analyst for many, many years, worked with adults and young people, and you have male-female relationships where they come and, sometimes one person is dominant and the other person is submissive, and they like it that way, and it's a power, but there's no physical abuse. Would you consider that as part of your definition?
Well, I guess you kind of have to look at the wording of that, of they like it that way, because we can't actually be sure of, what the situation is. If one of the partners is dominant and one of them are submissive, there should be equal partnership in all relationships. There shouldn't be a hierarchy between the partners. So generally, if there is a dominant and there is a submissive, you do want to take a closer look at the relationship if you're inside of it, to figure out what's going on, because you do want to feel like you're in an equal relationship where you can express yourself freely.
How many relationships that are equal?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot?
There's many equal relationships.
Yeah.
Amongst teenagers?
Yeah.
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 Okay.
There's healthy and there's unhealthy.
There's unhealthy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
What about two people who are dependent on one another to a great extent? Would you consider that an abusive relationship?
Well, I think what happens in these types of situations is that the partners become dependent on one another due to the isolation, withdrawing from family and friends around them, that they actually become codependent on one another, which is definitely a warning sign of an abusive relationship.
An abuser will make the relationship so that a victim becomes dependent on him or her, so that they can have, once again, it all goes back to power control. So if you have power control over someone, the way to do that is to dominate the situation or dominate the person, and you do that by telling them who they can talk to, what they can wear, where they can go to, isolating them from their friends and family who may be telling them that this is a bad situation for them to be in. Just controlling almost every aspect of their life, controlling and dictating everything that they do. That's how you gain power and control over someone to keep them in that situation.
Okay. How does how does that differ from domestic violence?
Sorry, did you want to say something? Oh, teen dating violence, I feel like one of the main reasons why it differs from domestic violence is that a lot of people don't take it seriously, and they don't think that it's something to look at or be questioned. They think it's just teen love and it's not that serious, but it really, really is. A lot of times teen dating violence can actually transpire into domestic violence situations. I think another reason why it's different is obviously there's no marriage certificate, but it doesn't mean that the situation is not something that shouldn't be looked at. So these people are in school all the time together, and they also have a lot of adults that are around them 24/7. But
hello, excuse me. We'll get back to you. Okay. Yes.
Am I in the air?
A little.
I heard Jordan Foxton has a pretty big penis.
Oh, what? I'll just clown.
So,
go ahead.
So I think that's also a reason why it differs from domestic violence, because you have these adults that may be around you, teachers, parents, but it's almost hard for them to know the situation that's going on. So that may be another reason why I believe it differs.
I've always, viewed domestic violence as something adults do. I don't. Maybe that's my naivety.
Well, that's where the problem quite often comes in, is that domestic violence is taken quite a bit more seriously than teen dating violence, and it's not an individual's fault or or their problem, but it is the way society views these relationships, that they're not as serious, that they are puppy love, and that they are too young to really understand what a relationship is. And if they believe you can't understand what a relationship is, how can you understand abuse?
Yeah.
And I just want to add, domestic violence, when you're charged with a domestic violence case, domestic violence means, when you're charged with it, it means any kind of violence against, a victim with an intimate relationship, whether it be boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, father, cousin, brother. If you have an intimate relationship with the victim, they will consider that domestic violence. Even if it's two sisters fighting, it's domestic violence. And if you're charged with domestic violence, it's a harsher charge.
Okay.
Hello?
You're doing well.
Yes, thank you. And it doesn't matter how old you are.
Okay.
Even if you're 12 and you have a fight with your brother and he's 15.
But you can't apply for a order of protection if you're a young person. Can you?
In some
Just
states
a second,
you
I'll
can.
be right with you.
But a lot of teenagers don't do it because you need parents' consent. And if the parent or the legal guardian does not know what's going on in a relationship, they're not going to get one.
Okay. That's clear. Okay, we have a caller. You have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Are a lot of the people, the kids that are falling for this kind of situation, these abusive...
Say that again? Hello?
Might have lost them.
Did you hear the question?
He didn't finish.
Yeah.
Okay, we got cut off. What are some of the common misconceptions about dating abuse?
Oh, that
dating
it's
violence?
All physical. I think that's one of the main misconceptions, is that it's all physical. No one takes it seriously until there's a broken bone or there's a black eye or there's bruises. Fact of the matter is there's so many different types of abuses, and that usually come prior to physical abuse. Like we always say in the tier presentations, you don't go on a first date and someone gets punched in the face right then and there. It doesn't happen like that. There's usually the emotional and mental abuse that takes place first. The verbal abuse, the sexual abuse, all those come usually before the physical abuse. So it's not just physical.
Okay, I'm throwing these things out to you because I need to understand this myself. I've done a lot of marital couples counseling, and there's a lot of emotional abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse, but no physical abuse. These are unhealthy relationships, and some of them pursue one partner or both. Well, in the case of marital or couples counseling, both will come for help, but sometimes it's just one person, typically the female. Let's say this, I would say that 70% of the patient population today in counseling are females, they're not males. There's a macho thing about men coming for counseling. So it exists in every relationship. There is some kind of verbal, emotional abuse.
Well,
What's the difference?
I think that people feel like this is something that is common, that is allowed, that is somehow justified, and that's just simply not true. I mean, no one likes to be, verbally, emotionally harassed, assaulted, nevertheless physically. And so, our whole point is to educate people on abusive relationships so that they can learn that this shouldn't be the norm, that this shouldn't be okay, this shouldn't be something that is just something that people don't worry about.
I'm sure you know this already, but the person who's being abused has a history of being abused. So it's natural that they experience this as something natural, comfortable. They don't know what love, real love is, affection.
They might have a history of being abused.
In some cases.
They usually, had to start from somewhere. Like the abusive relationship.
Nothing happens in a vacuum.
They had, people can have one abusive relationship their entire life. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean there was a pattern, and it doesn't necessarily mean there was abuse growing up. I mean, there can be a correlation. There's a great correlation, but that's not always the case.
Not always, but in the majority of cases it is, in my clinical experience.
I just want to go back to what we were talking about before, because I think sometimes when we talk about abusive relationships or talk about unhealthy relationships, people think that we mean that in their relationship that they'll never fight or that there'll never be a problem in a relationship. That's not the case. There are problems in relationships. There are fights. There are arguments. You're learning to coexist with somebody else. So it's definitely a struggle being even in a healthy relationship. But abuse is a pattern that happens constantly and takes toll. It's, tension building stage, the actual abuse, and the honeymoon stage. So it continually happens, and that's when it becomes a bad situation for.
All right, are you saying to me that the situation escalates to physical? Does it always escalate to physical?
Generally, in an abusive relationship, it doesn't go backwards.
Yeah.
It escalates higher. There may be an abusive relationship that is solely verbal and emotional their entire relationship, but abusive relationships generally don't go backwards unless there's a very serious change in the relationship.
So when it becomes physical, it stays physical?
It generally does not go backwards, right.
Okay.
It usually gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
Okay. Why isn't this considered a social issue?
Should be.
We're wondering that too. Yeah.
That's the question we want to know.
I think it's more because domestic violence is out there, and people associate that with older people, married couples, women with children. They don't associate it with teenagers. Like she said earlier, that it's puppy love. No one thinks it's real, that there's nothing going on. Young girls think that, just because, he's so jealous that I'm speaking to another boy, or he wants to know every place where I go and I have to call him, they think that's good. And it's not. Those are all signs, but no one takes it seriously. And I think that's why there's not enough awareness out there. And, because of the Rihanna Chris Brown situation, they're young teenagers and they're celebrities. That's why there's national media attention now. And it's a shame that it took for celebrities that young kids look up to bring this out into the open. And then it gives a chance for the little people, that make national news.
Yeah, a lot of it is happening, but it's not publicized too.
And it's been happening for
especially
years.
among celebrities.
For years. And you're lucky if it makes local coverage in your area. But to make national coverage, it takes a lot. Like something like this. Everyone's talking about it now. What's going to happen next month?
Exactly.
No one's going to speak about it anymore.
Okay.
Sometimes they don't talk about it for certain reasons. Hello?
Yes?
That sometimes they don't talk about it, like when there's like a domestic abuse situation, and then the cops come in, and then the girl says that she doesn't want the guy getting in trouble, so it goes warranted. You know what I mean? Like nobody gets in trouble, so it keeps escalating more and more and more.
Absolutely. Well, that happens a lot.
They always forgive them. The guys are always like, "I'll never do it again," and they do it again.
Yep.
Wow.
And usually, the victim in the situation usually lets the situation go due to the fear of retaliation and repercussion if they do talk to the police about their situation.
Right. It's
So
like abusers, and they say if as a child, if a kid gets abused, they don't say anything because they don't want the person getting in trouble, or like Stockholm syndrome or something.
Right.
exactly.
I think it's important for people to always remember that there's love going on in the situation. So you have to remember that the victim does love the abuser, and they feel like the abuser loves them back. So if they were to leave the situation or get anyone in trouble, their whole world would essentially be shattered.
Okay, yeah, that's a loose term, love. It's more dependent.
But it's love. It's love in their eyes.
To them, it's experienced as love.
This is sometimes where we run into the problem, because people think it's like
Love is a whole different real mature love is a whole different definition.
But it's love to them. That's why it's important.
We can't undermine what
you can't underestimate. Yeah,
because that's not going to be supportive to them.
No, you have to take them where they're at.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I have one more question. Are you guys talk about like CODA and like all the various programs that they are to like stop this cycle of codependency and abuse?
What was the question?
Yeah, like the Codependents Anonymous and things like that. Do you recommend the groups like that?
We're going to be talking about some ways to help in just a few minutes.
Okay,
I want to get on the statistics. What are because you brought up, what are the statistics with how prevalent is teen dating violence?
Well, it's depending on the study.
Yeah.
Depending on the study, I mean, they say there's been 1 in 3 teenage girls will experience dating violence. There's been 1 in 4, and there's been 1 in 5. So depending, but I mean, it's so prevalent that
it's not reported.
Exactly.
So you can't really get a good statistic on it.
Right.
Okay. It's just like when you're doing a survey, let's say you're doing research, you're doing a survey of attitudes towards something, and people are not going to tell you what their actual attitudes are because they think somebody's going to read it later. So that's the way that goes. Okay. So you're saying, in essence, the abuser draws the abused into their spider web and takes them away from. Is the person who's being abused? Did they at once upon a time have a solid support network, or no support network? Is this for loners? Do people who are loners get in?
There's no one standard victim. There's no one standard victim. So
just like there's no one standard abuser.
Right.
Okay.
You look at Tyra Banks. She's came out saying that she was, the victim, and she was a supermodel. So even a person like her can be an abuser. Yeah, Rihanna. Look at her.
It can happen to anybody. No matter what
race.
So you can have a family who's very supportive,
of course,
but you won't talk to them about what's going on with your
for many reasons, out of fear,
embarrassment,
out of shame, guilt, or out of getting blamed. Society this is a really victim blaming society, and
lack of education.
You mean they'll criticize you and how could you
say
let
it's
this
your
happen?
fault?
Like it's been said, it's been reported so many times that many teens blame Rihanna for the situation that happened with her. It's very common for victims to be victim blamed, and which is why they don't want to step out and say anything, because the first question is, well, why'd you stay in a relationship? Why don't you leave? Why don't you go do this? And no one ever asks, why is the abuser abusing you? You know, why is he or she putting a hand on you or saying or calling you names or trying to restrict you from hanging out with your friends and family? How no one ever says, how about I help you get out of this situation, you know, if that's what you want to do. Or no one ever says, how about I just listen to you or be a friend.
So they're not supportive, they're critical of that situation. Why do you think that occurs? Is that, you're just saying that that's our society, that's the way people are?
A lot of times, if you recognize that it can happen to anyone, that means that you're recognizing that it can happen to you. That means that you're recognizing it can happen to your sister, to your brother, to your neighbor, to your parent. If you recognize that this could happen to anyone, you're acknowledging the fact that it could touch your life, and that's too scary for some people.
So adults need to be educated in this, is what you're saying.
Definitely.
Perhaps the parents of an abused person
Absolutely.
really
It needs to start, you know, in schools, but at home as well. And I think that's why a lot of people don't speak about it, because there's no education. You talk about sex, drugs, alcohol, you know, how to act when you're in public, but when it comes to something like this, it's unspoken of. This is an unspoken of epidemic that no one knows about, and it happens more and more every day. And once you put the education in schools and you let parents know that this is going on, talk to your kids, and I think it'll be easier for people to come out and speak about it and notice the signs in their relationship and their friends' relationship as well.
Okay. So what are some of the signs that someone is being abused that you can observe? Or I know when, you know, when I talk about teenagers who do cutting, they hide that under a blouse or jacket or something like that. And do they try to hide the fact that they're being abused? They wear sunglasses and things like that. What are some of the signs?
The signs are not always physical. There are a lot of signs that you can look out. Change of wardrobe, change of hair, not doing the normal activities that they do. Say they used to be very involved in school activities. They may withdraw from that situation. Isolation, no longer hanging out with the group of friends that they used to before. Something that parents can look out for, definitely, which is what Carrie was talking about before, the technology abuse. Someone's glued to their cell phone or glued to their MySpace or Facebook, constantly in contact with this abuser. That's definitely an aspect that they can look out for, and obviously the physical as well.
And the physical, they'll usually in teen dating violence relationships will be kept to places that can be easily hidden because they do have parents and teachers looking out generally for their well-being. So a lot of times it'll be in an area that, you know, it wouldn't be on their face, or it wouldn't be
just on their arm.
On their arm. It may be, you know, pinching underneath their arm or something like that would cause bruises. But also, as Chania said, change of dress can really be a telltale sign that something's going on, like a drastic change all of a sudden.
So you're saying really that they withdraw in a sense from their normal, so-called normal life. Okay. All right. So there's some. Let's see. What can teachers do, family members do, friends do to help? Now, that's easier said than done, because we go back to, can the teacher actually see what's going on? Are they sensitized to maybe someone in their classroom is being abused? They may not want to see it. They may be critical